Hey everybody, welcome back to the Control Academy. As usual, I'm your host Marshall, and today I've got a second video for this week coming at you, as promised. And this one is one that I am really excited about. We're going to be playing Satoru Umezawa today, which was one of the first cards from the set that I saw, and I have literally been so excited about it since it was revealed. I think this card is nuts. I plan on building it in Commander. I really hope to see what it can do in Modern. I think the combo potential is really high. And here in Standard, I think I found a really nice home for this card. Satoru Umezawa. 1 a blue and a black gets you a 2/4 human ninja, legendary. If you happen to buy yourself a bundle of packs, as I find myself having to in order to make all these decks every week, you get this incredible art from Yoji Shinkawa. I need this thing as a print here in my office. I love it, love it, love it so much. But the card itself has 2 abilities, one of which we kind of don't care about, the other one we very much care about. So if you were going to play this in a ninja tribal deck, whenever you activate a ninjutsu ability, you get to essentially anticipate. You look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 into your hand, the rest on the bottom in any order, but you're looking to do it once a turn. That is almost never relevant in this particular build of the deck, but it's worth knowing it's there. The much more important part of this is that each creature card in your hand has ninjutsu for 2 and a blue and a black. So this has a ton of upside. I'm already slotting this into my Yuriko EDH deck so that we can ninjutsu Emrakul into play. It's going to have all sorts of dedicated like support on its own, and that's how I started building around Satoru initially, as I tried to build a dedicated combo deck to it. And I do think that that is probably the sort of end game for Satoru. This is not going to be the last time you see me play this card on the channel, because I'm obsessed with it. And so that particular version of the deck I'm not quite ready with, because going all in on it, it felt very glass cannon-y. And so I know that there's a way to build that one, and I'll get there. But for tonight, I found a deck that I'm pretty happy with, and it's actually just using Satoru as a value engine and just a threat. So what this deck is you'll notice that it's actually quite similar in general structure to the slug control deck with Jacob Hauken that I had previously. So in that deck, we were using Jacob Hauken as a card advantage engine that would eventually allow us to dump Toxrill and Hullbreaker Horror onto the battlefield for free. We are playing Toxrill here. I am testing out Jin Gitaxias as a top-end threat, and have been very happy with it. 1, because it's a new card, we got to give it a try. And 2, because unlike Hullbreaker Horror, if you don't have a ton of mana leave up, it at least protects itself a little bit. And that ends up being relevant in this meta where there's just so much going on. But for the most part, I don't necessarily know if this is the final composition of big end threats here. We've also got Genji the Midnight Sky, because it turns out getting back some of these things from the graveyard after they're inevitably killed is really useful, and it can also snag things out of your opponent's graveyard, which I learned much to my chagrin earlier this evening. And so this card is even more bonkers than I thought, but we'll get to that. 5 mana, 5/5 Flying Menace. Basically, we've got this suite of threats that we can cast them normally if we want to, just like we did in the slug control deck. Getting to 7 mana is not impossible when you can grind out a game the way that we normally do. Junji is very castable. It's even more so than Kairi, which I almost put in this deck. I think I keep wanting to go for 1 Junji and 1 Kairi, but I've left it this way mostly just because I like the 5-drop with Menace, because it also continues to work nicely with Satoru. But this is kind of the suite of cards that we want to end the game with. And importantly is that if we just think of Umezawa as a 3 mana 2/4, the deck still functions pretty well. But what Satoru ends up doing is 2 things. One is that if you can get a creature attacking through unblocked, for 4 mana, you can drop in one of these just game-ending threats. Toxrill doesn't even need to hit too many creatures before it just snowballs out of control. Jin Gitaxias protects itself, protects other things on your battlefield by countering the first thing that your opponent casts every turn, or at least the first artifact, instant, or sorcery spell they cast every turn, I should say. And then also doubles up on a lot of the things that we play. Instant sorceries and artifacts is almost everything in this deck. And so that's pretty good. Dropping these guys, any of these guys, in middle combat is really powerful because it gets them in, they swing right away, and they're not immune to removal at that point, but it means that at minimum, if the opponent doesn't have an answer at instant speed, they're at least going to connect for some amount of damage, which even when you got them for free off of Jacob Hauken, sometimes they'd have some removal spell on their turn that meant that you didn't untap with it. In this case, at least you can dome them for some damage. So how are we supporting this? Well, luckily there's a lot of cards that allow us to attack and trigger Umezawa's ability, including Umezawa himself. There's a lot of times where you just attack with him and ninjutsu him back to your hand for the creature, and that's actually pretty reasonable most of the time. But we can also eventually crew up Reckoner Bankbuster. We've got Malevolent Hermit. Again, Junji is very castable, and that can menace its way into dropping one of these big guys. The tokens that we get off of Reckoner Bankbuster are worth noting. And even if we use our Malevolent Hermits, they have the Benevolent Geist on the backside that, again, they are evasive and can attack in. And so because it's not our goal to trigger this ninjutsu ability as soon as humanly possible, we're willing to sit and wait for the right opportunity. The second part of Satoru Umezawa is that if he's on the battlefield and we attack, even with just a really innocuous attack, if we go in for an attack with a Malevolent Hermit, or a Reckoner Bankbuster goes in, we can actually kind of force these sort of psychological blocks that our opponent might not otherwise make, because even if they don't know what our top end threats are, you don't play Satoru Umezawa if you don't intend to ninjutsu in something crazy. So even if we don't have a threat to put in, you get these situations where people will make blocks they otherwise wouldn't, just to make sure that you can't ninjutsu. And what's really mind gamey and useful about that is that if you one time attack and then don't ninjutsu when they let it through, the number of times that people will then not take it seriously and have the other side of thing where they'll let it through, every single time, and then you get to drop one of these things. The mind games of Satoru Umezawa are through the moon. And so he does a lot for this deck, even just in terms of how he forces our opponents to think about what's on our side of the board. There's 3 copies of him. I want to play 4, but there's just so much that needs to happen in this deck to support it, and he's kind of questionable in multiples that I went with 3. Even that sometimes feels like a bit much because, again, we're not leaning on him so much as using him as a value engine, but 3 has felt good enough. I've talked about Path of Peril at length before. This is a blue-black deck that we have exactly 3 white sources in hand, or in the deck rather, so that we can potentially cleave this. But having a Wrath, especially with how the threats seem to be lining up in the current standard, that can sweep up on turn 3 is really useful. I have not tried an Esper version of this deck that could take advantage of some of the other Wraths, and I don't really think we need all of that other stuff, but that is a possibility if you're looking for more hard removal. We've got Saw It Coming as our main counter. Since we're not playing Jacob anymore, we can go back to just real counter spells, and based on what's in this deck and what's in the format, I think Saw It Coming is our best option. We're not playing enough artifacts for Disruption Protocol, and there's not quite enough coming in from outside of the hand to justify wash away, and so Saw It Coming is just pretty solid. I think that there's some options here, but Saw It Coming is where I'm at. We've got Malevolent Hermit. I already talked about having a body to attack with while Satoru's on the board is useful. It's also just generally a really good counterspell on legs these days, because we've got all sorts of non-creature spells from sagas and enchantments and whatnot that our opponents are playing. The blue-white artifacts deck has plenty of things that this hits. So it's good enough on its own. The fact that it can attack is really useful. And the backside both makes our non-creature spells uncounterable and is evasive, again, to sort of support that engine of Satoru. We're playing Reckoner Bankbuster. This is going to be in pretty much every deck that I play, because even if it wasn't a vehicle, that would be a solid ability. And then the fact that eventually we can turn it on as a 4/4, both to beat face as its own win con, and also to potentially fuel Satoru, means that this is really great. We've got Fading Hope. As usual, this card is really great. We need that sort of 1 mana removal, even if it's not hard removal here, to both just keep the board empty while we set up, and also scry, so we can set up our draws. And then I've got March of Swirling Mist here. We played the White March in the Kyrie deck last week, and that was really great. Turns out this one's also excellent. Both defensively, phasing out your opponent's creatures is really great, but it's also really common that you play either Umezawa or one of the big threats, and being able to leave up a March of Swirling Mist to just phase out the creature you're trying to protect and a bunch of things from your opponent's board is enough to turn the tide pretty significantly. This deck is primarily blue cards. I believe it's 55% blue and like 38% black. So you're able to get that number up pretty high pretty often. And so as a result, this card ends up being pretty important for both protecting our big pieces without having to cost us much mana. We don't have to leave up a lot of mana, and also allowing us to clear the way for cheating in one of these big spells. And so, this is not necessarily the way you would think about building a control deck. And Satoru, doesn't tap to draw a card like Jacob Hauken does, but it also has considerably less constraints on deck building, since we're already playing some of these really solid cards that can attack in. We don't need to lean on it. Sometimes we can just hard cast these things. But the biggest problem that I always had with trying to hard cast any of these big threats in any of the control decks that I played is that you always get to a point where you want to leave up just that little bit of mana for a Saw It Coming or an Infernal Grasp or a Fading Hope. And by the time you're at the point that you can do that, things are pretty tight. And so even if you have 7 mana up, just being able to pay 4 to cheat it in with Satoru means that you've got that extra 3 to do what you will with, and just threaten to close out the game, defend the big guy. It gives you a lot of flexibility. And so I have a feeling that a lot of people watching this deck are going to be skeptical inherently, because this doesn't look like a deck that should run Satoru Umezawa, but it works so well. You do need to make sure you're hitting your land drops and playing things conservatively, and not, and this is important, and not trying to trigger Satoru as soon as humanly possible. If you play this like a combo deck and you try to just go turn 3 Satoru, turn 4 Toxrill, that is the play pattern that tends to trip up the most. What you want to do is set up a position where you can control the board, keep things under control, and then trigger Umezawa in a way that just ends things super quick. And so this is really the engine piece as opposed to a combo piece. And as long as you think about it that way and play it that way, you should get a lot of value out of it. Anyway, The mana base is pretty straightforward. Only thing that's really worth noting here is, again, we've got Channel Lands. Takenuma actually ends up being pretty good here in that if things die or we want to just use it for value, we can yoink creatures out of our graveyard using this. 9 times out of 10 it's a legendary swamp, and so consider that how you will, but it's pretty solid. There's no sideboard. This is a best of 1 deck. If there's interest in porting this over to best of 3, I'll work on that sideboard. But since we've lost our dearly departed Divide by 0, there's no point in building a learn board anymore. But anyway, this is Satoru Control. We're going to jump into some games. If you like the video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. If you want to keep diving into these wacky control decks that we play here on the channel, give it a subscribe. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get some ninja slugs up in here. See you. All right, next opponent, Juice Bass or Juice Base. Either way, good luck. All right, well, on the play with Umezawa, a pair of Wraths, and a Toxrill, let's do it. I don't know that it's gonna work, but if our opponent's playing the right stuff, maybe we can draw another land and get a early Toxrill. In reality, it is not often correct to do the turn 3 Satoru, turn 4 Toxrill, but we'll see how the game goes. I'm interested in free wins. All right. This is a tough choice. Double blue turns off most of the deck, but also means that Malevolent Hermit doesn't do anything this turn. They put on double black. I think I want to draw a card, and I don't necessarily need the Hermit out yet. Although, there's a chance I'll live to regret that. Another one of these enchantment decks. This one's black-white. Interesting. Well, I guess we don't know that's an enchantment deck. The only decks I've seen play these sagas are like super enchantment heavy, but in theory, that's actually just a decent way to fix your mana, so could be anything. Could be anything. Let's play this out of land. Drop a Hermit. This is good because it lets us potentially counter a non-creature, and then also leaves up the possibility to draw. It's actually pretty nice because they can discard that plains and then immediately play it. Or a swamp. Cool. Hashtag ramp. Yeah, the thing on the back of this is going to be hard for me to kill, so let's not commit too many of them to the board, I suppose. Takenuma is good, but I don't know that I can afford that yet. Gonna play Umezawa, leave up drawing a card. There's a chance that Umezawa just eats it, but if he doesn't, then see what happens. Sorin the Mirthless.
I bring order to this world. I bring my own army.
Let's draw a card. Jin Gitaxias. All right. So, how to play this? I make him Path of Peril, but then I don't get to do a whole lot after that. It doesn't hit the Architect, but maybe that's okay. I could do that and play the Hermit. I could do that and draw a card. Let's see. Let's clean up the board a bit. Resolve. Let's draw a card, see if we can get a land. Got a land. That's not awful. Maybe if we get one more land, then we get to do this, but next we've got 2 mana up. And then I'll leave it back. This thing basically gets to attack for free if I attack in, so Rite of Oblivion is rough. That's pretty good. X equals 1. I guess that kills my pilot. Not sure that I'm too sad about that, but I guess it turns off my ability to double attack and get off that way. Okay, well, let's make them have it. Okay, Deadly Dispute. I mean, they could still have answers that they could play with the treasure tokens, so it's fine. Save me 2 life. Go to combat. Attack. Ninjitsu-ing Jin Gitaxias. Submit. Rite of Oblivion is actually a pretty solid answer because they can cast it twice through this, but they need, and they have enough mana but not enough things to sacrifice to do that, unless they play okay, counter that. Okay, so this is how they're going to do that. They're going to get that countered and then they'll Vanishing Verse. Okay, yeah, it happens. This might surprise you, but I've got other things I can do too. Alright, 6 mana. Let's play... Actually, I do have 7, but not dumb enough to run Satoru out into Rite of Oblivion quite so easily. So here, I could play the Malevolent Hermit that accomplishes the goal of preventing the Rite of Oblivion. Leaving up Saw Coming also does that, but the Malevolent Hermit, the upside is that I can use it for ninjutsu if it survives. In turn, I suppose I could have crewed the Bankbuster and attacked, but given that the Wanderer exists, I'd rather not tempt fate right now. Legion Angel. Okay. My turn. Yep. Play an island. So here, the fact that this Rite of Oblivion has flashback is going to be the continued bane of my existence. I think I take another turn, take it easy, play another Hermit, and then I've got 5, 6 up. Going to foretell this Sock coming. Now I've only got 2 blue mana, so I can't use all 3 of them, but this gives me the most options, I think. And if they want to get in for 4 in the air next turn, so be it. Interesting. Deadly disputing the creature. They must have a Wrath. I don't know why they would sacrifice the Angel otherwise. I mean, maybe there's a reanimation spell I'm not thinking of. I guess they've got extras, so why not? Alright, and this is out of counter, so I cannot draw with it anymore. That's okay, and go to my turn. Memory Deluge is just fine. So here is where things can get a little crazy. So attack with the 2 Hermits. So we'll go ahead and Ninja Slug. Hiya. And I even get Satoru's ability. So I'm going to take the March of Swirling Mist because that is an amazing defense card. That happens. They'll gain a life. But that Angel's gonna die and get me a slug. Alright, I like where we're at. I've got 4 mana up. Only 1 counter, which is a bit dicey, I suppose. But I've got 2 ways to protect my Toxrill. Professor of Symbology. Yep, only so much I can do about that. What are they gonna get? Necrotic Fumes. Okay. Rite of Oblivion. Gonna start by countering that. And they can technically flash it back if they want to sacrifice their Mihawk Massacre. Professor of Symbology, okay. Resolve. As tempting as it would have been to get that Junji. Oh, it's so good. Having this March of Swirling Mist is going to be a big part of what lets us win this game. So let's start by getting in for a whole pile of damage. And then we're sitting on 7, 8 mana. Gonna play out the Hermit. Hermie the Frog here. Now I've got 5, 6 mana, so let's see. I think, as tempting as it is to run out another Bankbuster, I want to leave us as much mana as possible so that I can both Hermit and do a big March. Because there's not a lot of things that lose me this game here, but need to not lose my creature. Why are they exiling that? Interesting. You can have my Slug. I'm not gonna dump more damage than necessary. Is that them conceding? Yes. Okay. Cool. We got some ninja slugs. Yeah. All right. Oh, we did it. All right. We're up against Avide. Good luck, Avide. Alright, we got 2 mana, 2 Fading Hopes, Reckoner Bankbuster, and a 7-drop. We're on the play, so that's good. This does need to draw lands and has a pretty decent shot of doing that. We'll give it a go. See what happens. Put this on blue. See what our opponent's playing. If you can play the big toothy boy, then we're going to be feeling good. Put this on black and then drop the Bankbuster. Shatterskull Smashing. Not really sure what that represents in this meta. Probably is it of some variety. Wait, red, interesting. Actually, this is probably the what do you want? Oh, we didn't draw land. Of course we didn't. Pass, see if we can get it off of a Bankbuster. If not, we leave a Fading Hope. This is probably that Hinata deck that's is going around since CGB posted that. Of course, they braid. Do I want to draw a card while I can? Yeah. If it's a land, I'm going to be... Okay, well, it wasn't a land, so... I'm not actually all that glad it wasn't a land, but at least I didn't feel bad for not activating it sooner in the turn, I suppose. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of... If this is multi-targeting and that's a targeting thing, well, that's at least blue. Yeah, let's go ahead and get this on the battlefield. If it's a creature, we can bounce it. If it's a non-creature, we can counter it with Hermit. But at least this starts getting something going. Missing a land drop last turn was rough. It's going to continue to be rough because we still on a double black. Stensia Uprising. Going to counter that in a heartbeat. Yeah. That was a... Gosh, we're missing another land drop. Alright. If we manage to pull this one out, then I'm thanking the magic gods. You are still not allowed to have a Stensia Uprising. Sorry. Bad opponents. Bad. Hey, we got ourselves a land. Feeling better now. I would not say I'm feeling great, but I am feeling better now. Alright, this is not the deck that I thought it was going to be. Gonna counter that too. Alright. Now we're getting some good progress. Play the Hermit, leave up Fading Hope. See what happens. Something tells me that they are not playing a whole lot of things that we're going to be able to bounce. And if that is a true statement, then this hand is not amazing. Showdown of the Scalds. Alright. Well, at least we'll get to see some more of what's in their deck. So. Alright. That's a pile of things. Alright. Well, now we're drawing lands like it's nobody's business. Play a blue source. So the trouble here So if we attack, the Wandering Emperor just nukes it. On the other hand, we do have Fading Hope, and so it gives us at least an opportunity to get some benefit out of it. So I'm still going to attack. They're not countering our stuff, so it's not a huge thing. Where if we had a Satoru in hand, it'd be a different story. But now, if they want to try to kill it with the Wandering Emperor, then that's fine. We'll bounce it in response, and life will be good. If they make a Samurai, it's also fine for us. Yeah, I'm not surprised that they're more interested in the wedding announcements. This card is interesting. 3/4 Vigilance to make spirits, but I can... At least that's something. When it gets to that stage, it's something that we can use the cards in our hand against. Currently don't get any value off mode the second chapter, and then they're just playing towards that third mode. Here, I mostly just want to scry, so now on the one hand, so this is only till, okay, so they lose access to the Wandering Emperor next. So on the hand, we don't really need a ton of lands at this point. On the other hand, it gets us to being able to play Jin Gitaxias, so I'm actually going to leave that on top and probably live to regret that decision, but we'll see. So let's play this on blue. They've got 4 in hand. They're playing more enchantments than anything, which Jin Gitaxias actually doesn't do anything against. So if I play this out, I think given that I've got the Fading Hope, I want to be patient, see if I can get 1 more mana so I can leave up the Fading Hope. Oh, they're discarding the Suppressor Symbology and then immediately getting it back. That's pretty sweet. Because there's been too many times where I play one of these big threats on 7 and they immediately remove it. I will happily answer the crap out of that mascot exhibition, though. What you gonna do, opponent? What you gonna do? Lore Hold Command. So the modes they're choosing are sack a permanent, draw 2, deal 3, gain 3. Yeah, fine. I mean, fine in a relative sense, but yeah. Toxrill would be nice. Resolve. Oh, that's yet another Path of Peril. So, question is, do I remain patient with Jin Gitaxias, or do I put it out, hoping that it just keeps... I mean, I don't care about Maxed Out Exhibition because I got Path of Peril coming out the wazoo. Next turn, the most they're going to do to me is 2 with these. I think I pass, because now I get the opportunity potentially to knock this thing out. But yeah, if they want a mascot exhibition, fine. That is one of the easier things for us to answer. Alright, going to 18. Yep. Drawing 2 is pretty sweet there for them. Will not deny that. Hall of Storm Giants is a land. It's not the land I wanted, but at least gets me where I want to be. Go ahead and nuke them all. In theory. They've got a full grip, so they're probably not particularly worried at this stage, but we'll see. Alright, Emperor. A lot of people just really like playing the Wandering Emperor main phase, but at the end of the day, like, she has flash for a reason. Like, take advantage of it. Yeah, ouch. That's less fun than I'd like to admit. Alright. My turn. Double Fading Hope is pretty nice. So the question here is, do I Jin Gitaxias and leave up Fading Hope? It's just actually pretty decent since I don't have two Fading Hope. I can use it both offensively and defensively. So as long as I don't tap them, as long as I don't tap Jin, then there's not really any major risk for, I guess, Wandering Emperor. I'm mostly worried about O-Ring effects. And so if he'll double up Fading Hope, then I can get some value out of it, at least if they try to kill it. I have to imagine that they've got answers at this point. 5/5 is not as big as his previous incarnations, but it's pretty good. And then the upside, too, is that if this survives the turn, then I can Path of Peril and not hurt him. There's a whole other half of this deck that we haven't really even seen at this point that I am really really looking forward to. Things like the March of Swirling Mist and you know, what in Junji and whatnot that make this a whole lot more palatable. So they're swinging in with quite a lot. So this is a risk, but it's pretty good. So let's go ahead and bounce this. He copies. Bounce this. We get to scry twice. Bottom. I'll leave a Jinji on top. If they do kill it, then Jinji becomes a pretty good way to threaten that. Now, they could have a burn spell here, and that ends this, but okay, well, there's that Ganjo. But hey, we still got their dude, so I'm not going to say it's fine, but worse things have happened. And Jinji is really good at getting back Praetors. Alright. Pass turn.
We must protect the people.
Alright. Takanuma is not bad. I'm actually going to leave that in hand. So, going to attack the Wanderer. Now I'm expecting another Wanderer here.
Back to wandering.
Back to wandering, okay. We can do this at instant speed, and that's fine. Do I want to fire off one Path of Peril here defensively? I think that's the right call. So with these two wedding festivities, got to keep the board at least reasonably clear. I've always got another one as a backup, so. And turn. There's that Wandering Emperor.
Now you've done it. That's coming off.
That's a fun voice line. Yeah. Zang Zadam. Got another? Actually, I only have 2 black mana. I need to beef that up a bit. Our opponent is just fine when it comes to mana. Umezawa is interesting here. They've chose not to plus, which seems interesting. Okay. I think what I do is I cast Umezawa and pass. This is an interesting case because, like, with Umezawa in combat, I can actually use Takanuma to get back the Praetor. I'm not worried about angels particularly because I've still got that Path of Peril.
I've got new moves to teach you.
Alright, so next turn this is 3, 7, so it's gonna be tight if I want to use both of these. So I think I'm going to use Takanuma now, just to make better, more efficient use of my mana. Because this next turn I'm going to want to Wrath and use it. Mill a lot of stuff I don't want to see. Get back Jin Gitaxias. Saw It Coming is awesome. Path of Peril. No cleave. Go to combat. And attack. Blockers. That's not a spell. Can't counter it. Alright. That's fine. I mean, fine's a strong word, but something I'm going to have to tolerate. Let's go ahead and foretell this. Yep. Cashing for Samurai. We're officially out of Path of Perils, which is scary. Can play Junji, which doesn't get us anything particularly thrilling from their graveyard, and currently gets us Umezawa back, but that's probably good enough. I don't want to play Jin Gitaxias because that doesn't leave us enough to counter something. Maybe it does. I think I may have miscounted. I think I've got 9 lands, actually. Okay, so I could have, but Junji is still pretty good value.
Strike fast and strike hard.
They're looking hard at Jinji. Stop touching my dragon. It's impolite. You know what? So my options here is I can just chump the samurai and use Genji's ability to get back Umezawa, or make them discard 2 cards, which is also not awful. Or I could just take the 5. I think here I just take the 5. It hurts, but a 5/5 with Menace seems pretty decent, especially when I can drop Jin Gitaxias next turn. Yeah, I'm not okay with that. Got another? Farewell is such a good card. Infernal Grasp is also very good. So I will... Did I maybe count that right last time? Okay, so I guess I had that right, but maybe the right answer was actually holding back to, well, I get to block this samurai, but we'll see. I can afford to take one more hit, maybe. Someday I'll cast this Memory Deluge.
That's that.
All right. Do they have another removal spell, or did they just not realize that Jin Gitaxias does that? That's pretty decent. I am not sad about that in any way. I'm going to leave the Hall of Storm Giants up and memory, just all of this, and get in with Jinji. They've got Professor of Symbology and Iganjo that they can get back. That pass the turn. I assume they get the Professor here of Symbology. Yep, makes sense. Reduce to memory. Do you have 2 instants or sorceries? Because if you do not, then it doesn't do anything. I guess their last card could be Iganjo. Why? Okay. But if that is the case, then I've at least got backup. There we go. Got there. Yeah. Whew. All right. That was a good one. That was a long one. Thanks for sitting through that one, everybody. All right. Next up is someone with Japanese characters for a name. I do not know how to read those, so good luck, whomever you are. If this were a swamp, I'd give it a go, but basically, virtually nothing in this hand is playable unless I draw a swamp, and I don't want to take that risk, especially on the draw. This is much better. I'll keep this, and I'm going to put Satoru to the bottom. It feels bad doing that, especially given the namesake of the deck, but I need to see more of a payoff for him before I can prioritize him over the other stuff in my hand. But I'm sure we'll get there. Dragon Saga can come in is pretty solid. Wonder if our opponent's on mono white aggro or something spicier. Looking like mono white aggro. Except that if it is, then they're off to a very slow start, which I won't complain about. With that in mind, I will foretell this now. If they drop a Thalia, I'll be glad I did. Clarion Spirit, okay. I'm going to need to get myself a Path of Peril. The fact that they don't have a... they didn't have a follow-up to that right away is very good for us. Play this out as a land. Gonna play out the Hermit. I don't expect to actually use its ability, but I can leave up it as a body, and then also Fading Hope, which is probably much more relevant given the board. If they have Elite Spellbinder, then I will wish that I had. Then I'll wish that I had kept up a counter spell, but here I face an interesting decision. If I Fading Hope the Clarion Spirit, then I'm guaranteeing them a second spell, but if I don't Fading Hope the Clarion Spirit, then they have a second spell, which they almost certainly will. Then they get 2 spirits, so I think the answer to that is just Fading Hope. I'll keep it Infernal Grasp. Given that I got a Field of Ruin, that's not bad. I will need another black source soon, but I've got Memory Deluge, which will hopefully be good enough. The other option was to March of Swirling Miss, the Clarion Spirit, and that would have accomplished approximately what I wanted it to, but feels like it would have been a bit extra, especially so to have the exile the Fading Hope from the hand. Luminarch Aspirant. Yeah, I'll counter that. And basically, alright, well, they've got another one anyway. I'm going to need that. Need that board wipe sooner than later. But so I need to kill one on the stack because I can also kill one on the board. I was hoping they wouldn't have to just kill 2 Luminarch Aspirants in one turn, but live and learn, I suppose. Well, there's a second black source. Not that it's amazingly relevant right now, but this is getting a little dicey. Let's go ahead and pass. I'm not too worried yet, but I do really need to wipe this board. And the upside of it is that everything here is wrathable. So, but boy, it's getting scary. All right, do what you gotta do. The Hermit's doing its job though. It's keeping those Clarion Spirits from attacking, so it saved me at least 8 life already. Good job, Hermie the Frog. Let's draw some cards. Well, Big Giant Flyer is probably pretty decent. And Satoru... it's ground blocker. Is it better or worse than a land? I think I need butts. Gotta land anyway. Alright. Let's play Genji. At least stem the bleeding to a certain degree. And pass. This clever Lumimancer is going to get scary. Not a lot of great Genji hits in my hand currently. But, a guy can dream. So, I do have an interesting option. I could march a Swirling Mist Lumimancer. I'd have to exile Umezawa from my hand. Is that worth it to stop this from potentially getting in this turn? I think it is. I actually get to do two things because I'm going to exile a card from hand. Submit. So I'll exile this and this so that neither of them get their counters. Yep. Block one at least, I suppose. There's the Path of Peril, and of course these are phased out. Of course, that's how it goes. So, I'm going to leave Junji back on blocking duty. And then Path of Peril, and I guess poor Hermie doesn't make it. Except he does when he comes back as a Geist. There we go. It's almost like I planned it that way. Ha. Try double spelling now. Hey, there we go. Good enough. Suck it, Mono White. Turns out wraths are good. Alright. Our next opponent is Nemkunai. Good luck, Nick. Good luck, Nemkunai. Oof. Oh, this is not what I wanted to see. Can't play without blue mana. This is fine. It's only just fine. I think I'll keep it. Toxrill goes to the bottom, unfortunately. Alright, extra land is much appreciated. It's cleric class. Okay. Oof. Alright, well, now I'm regretting putting that Toxrill at the bottom. Let's go ahead and put this on blue. And then Bankbuster. Kept the second Bankbuster because, like, given how things were looking, I was pretty sure I was going to need to draw a whole bunch of cards, but I mean, that's still realistically the case, and especially with our opponent missing land drops. But I'll pass. I want to leave up both the removal, bounce, and card draw. Let them go to combat. Cool. And then I will Fading Hope that. I'll keep, and do I want to keep an Infernal Grasp or do I want to dig for land? I have an Infernal Grasp. I really want to dig for either land or Path of Peril, so I'll put that to the bottom. It's gonna feel rough if I draw duds, but that's not quite what I needed. Let's see if I can yoink another land. That's a land. Your boy still got it. Our opponent's probably gonna replay the Aspirant. I can probably afford to let that sit for another turn, and so drop another Bankbuster. This gives us the upside of when I take the counter off this one, I can then use this as a blocker, and also I can just draw more cards, so that's pretty decent. Go ahead and take that last counter off, see if I can hit a land. Of course it didn't, but I get a treasure, so that's pretty good. I think for now, I go ahead and leave up the potential for both Infernal Grasp and blocking with the Bank Buster. I've actually got a lot of action in this hand, and then I can start playing games with Umezawa next turn. Love the art on this pilot token. It's awesome. Will they see the blocker? Apparently not. Crew 3 has the blockers. I will happily do that if they let me. There we go. Good enough. Mono white taken down twice. All right, and welcome back to the wrap up. That was a lot of fun, and I hope you agree. I know that there was a lot of mono white going on there. That's kind of just how the format is in here, and so I went ahead and included those. I will say I did adjust the order of the games a little bit. The match against Orzhov was actually one of the later games I played, but because the deck doesn't rely on Satoru, a lot of the games, he's either basically just a red herring for the opponent to remove, or, we're just, ramping up and just using him as a way to close out the game. But we don't need that out there. And so there's a lot of games where, you don't actually have anything going ninja in, but I actually got a real solid win where Ninjitsu-ing in a Toxrill was the turning point of that game, so I put that one first. I don't usually reorder things, but we did that. But we got a ninja slug. It was great. I've ninjutsu'd a few things here or there, but that was more impactful ones. Let's go with that. I love this deck. I think it needs more card draw, honestly, which is weird to say considering that it has the Reckoner Bank Buster and Memory Deluge. But the original Slug Control also had 4 copies of Consider, which I think are actually more important than I give them credit for. And I don't necessarily know where the best place to fit them in is, but I'm sure there's room somewhere. So March of Swirling Mist was excellent. You can use it to protect our board. Just having one in hand makes it a lot easier to be confident staring down Rites of Oblivion, which is really hard to work around because of that flashback. But since it's sorcery speed, if you can just get back to your turn, then you're pretty much good, and so that's that card is really great. I think I undervalued March of Swirling Mist during spoiler season, but actually in practice, it's one of the better ones out there. Junji is excellent, but it's not the circus of value that Kyrie is at all times. When you have a graveyard that's set up and has a ton of great stuff in it, or your opponent has some bomb that you've killed, then Junji just feels like the best card in the world. And I mean, to be fair, it's pretty solid, even if you're just ripping 2 cards out of your opponent's hand. It's not the worst. But I think if I were doing this again and how I would modify it moving forward, I might do a split of Junji and Kyrie. It kind of fits out that curve a little bit better. Kyrie does different things, but tends to have at least a little bit more, a less situational death trigger. And so that's something you want to keep in mind. Jin Gitaxias was really solid against opponents that didn't either didn't know how or couldn't play around him. But, you know, we saw in that game against Orzhov where, you know, the opponent just, you know, let it counter a Deadly Dispute, which, to be fair, they had to sacrifice, you know, a treasure for no value, but it was just a treasure. And then they just Vanishing Verse Jin Gitaxias. And so there's times when it's like just like a solid lock, but then there's also times when, you know, the opponent just says, okay, fine. It's basically like they treated it as like a that ward discard, the Graveyard Trespasser, where they had to pay the mana for the first spell. But yeah, so Jin Gitaxias, good. It still has the sort of Hullbreaker horror problem where you still have to leave up something to defend it. And March of Swirling Mist does a great job of that. We just didn't have it on hand when we need to protect Jin. But you know, again, all solid additions from Kamigawa. And so, you know, that is where Satoru has its upside. It's a good blocker in this format. It can do a fair amount of work on its own. And then if you get to a point where you have 4 mana up, you can ninjutsu in a gigantic slug horror. And that, just that sentence alone makes it worth it. So I'm going to continue tweaking Satoru control. This is not the last time you're going to see Satoru on this channel. Again, I am a total Umezawa stan here. And I hope you enjoyed the games. If you did, please drop a like and consider subscribing to the channel. And either way, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.
Searching for greatness in a sea of the dying and shameless. A sea of the aimless. I don't wanna be one of